What if I told you that a single moment of compassion could echo through time, creating ripples that reshape destinies? What happens when those ripples finally find their way back to where they began? Have you ever wondered if someone out there remembers you not as you are now, but as you were years ago, when you spoke words that have long faded from your memory? What if those forgotten words changed everything for someone? And what if that someone now holds the key to your future, neither of you knowing the invisible thread that connects your lives? If you're drawn to stories of serendipity, lost connections, and the transformative power of human kindness, you've come to the right place. Take a moment to engage with this story, because what you're about to discover might forever change how you see the strangers you pass every day. This is the story of Maya and Gabriel, two lives intertwined by a moment neither fully remembers, until a chance encounter in a Chicago emergency room brings everything full circle. The harsh fluorescent lights of Chicago General Hospital cast long shadows as Maya Rodriguez finished her rounds in the pediatric ward. At 27, she moved through the corridors with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to navigate institutional spaces without drawing attention. Her scrubs were always immaculate, her smile warm but reserved, and her presence somehow both essential and overlooked. Maya had worked the night shift for 3 years, know it paid better than day shifts, and fewer people meant fewer questions about her background. Having aged out of the foster system at 18, she'd fought for every opportunity that brought her here. High school diploma earned through night classes, nursing degree funded by student loans and weekend jobs. Clinical rotations completed while working full-time at a medical supply warehouse. The pediatric ward was her sanctuary. Here, among the sick children and worried parents, her past felt irrelevant. What mattered was her gentle touch, her ability to find veins on the smallest patients, her knack for making frightened children laugh despite their pain. "Maya," called Dr. Sarah Chen, the attending physician, "we've got a new admission coming up from the ER, 7-year-old with acute appendicitis. Surgery's scheduled for first thing in the morning." Maya nodded, already preparing the room. She'd developed a reputation for being the nurse who could calm the most anxious children, though she never quite understood why. Perhaps it was because she remembered what it felt like to be small and scared in institutional settings. What Maya didn't know was that her compassionate care had been noticed by more than just her colleagues. For the past 6 months, the hospital's new chief of pediatric surgery had been quietly observing the night shift staff, particularly impressed by one nurse whose patient advocacy had prevented several potential complications. Dr. Gabriel Winters was something of a legend at Chicago General. At 32, he'd built a reputation as one of the most skilled pediatric surgeons in the Midwest. His success story was well known. Scholarship kid from a rough background who'd fought his way through medical school and now saved children's lives with hands that had once known hunger and fear. What people didn't know about Gabriel was that he kept a small, worn photograph in his Walletta picture of himself as a child, standing next to a girl whose face he could barely remember but whose words had saved his life 20 years ago. He'd been searching for her ever since. The emergency call came at 3 a.m., multiple victims from a house fire, including several children. The hospital erupted into organized chaos as the trauma team prepared for the influx of patients. Maya was assigned to the first ambulance, a 6-year-old boy with severe smoke inhalation. As she worked alongside the respiratory therapist, adjusting oxygen levels and monitoring vitals, she found herself whispering the same words she'd said to countless frightened children over the years. "You're safe now," she murmured, stroking the boy's hair. "Someone's going to take really good care of you. You're going to grow up and do something amazing, I just know it." Unbeknownst to Maya, Gabriel had been called in for emergency surgery on one of the other victims. As he scrubbed in, he overheard her voice through the thin walls of the trauma bay. Something about her tone, the specific cadence of her words, made him pause. "You're going to grow up and do something amazing." His hand stilled on the scrub brush. 20 years ago, in the children's home, a girl had said almost those exact words to him during the darkest moment of his life. He'd been 8 years old, devastated by his parents' death in a car accident, and had climbed onto the roof of Sunset Ridge Children's Home with the intention of joining them. But a girl he couldn't remember her face clearly, but he remembered her voice had found him there. She'd sat beside him, unafraid, and when he'd sobbed that no one would miss him, she'd said, "I would miss you. And I think you're going to grow up and do something really amazing that helps people." She'd given him a small Tokena smooth stone she'd painted with a smiley face, and somehow convinced him to come down from that roof. The next day, she'd been transferred to another facility, and he'd never seen her again. Gabriel finished scrubbing and entered the OR, but his mind was elsewhere. That voice. Could it be possible? Over the following weeks, Gabriel found himself paying closer attention to the night shift. He began staying late, reviewing cases, observing the staff dynamics. Maya Rodriguez was exactly as her reputation suggested: competent, compassionate, and somehow able to connect with the most difficult patients. But it was during a particularly challenging case that Gabriel finally got his answer. A 7-year-old girl had been admitted after a severe allergic reaction. She was scared, combative, and refusing to let anyone near her. Gabriel watched through the observation window as Maya approached the child's bed. "Hey there, sweetheart," Maya said softly. "I know you're scared. I was scared a lot when I was your age, too." The girl looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I lived in a place with lots of other kids," Maya continued, "and sometimes I got so scared I wanted to hide on the roof. But you know what I learned? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone help you." Gabriel's breath caught. He pulled out his phone and called his private investigator, a man he'd hired years ago to help search for the girl from his past. "I need you to run a background check," he said quietly. "Maya Rodriguez, night shift nurse at Chicago General. I need to know everything about her childhood, specifically if she was ever at Sunset Ridge Children's Home." The answer came back within hours. Maya Rodriguez had indeed been at Sunset Ridge from ages 6 to 8, the same period Gabriel had been there. She'd been transferred to another facility when the home had downsized, eventually aging out of the system and working her way through nursing school. That night, Gabriel made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Gabriel waited until the next evening, when Maya was working alone in the pediatric ward. He found her in the break room, reviewing patient charts during her dinner break. "Maya?" he said softly. She looked up, surprised to see the chief of surgery addressing her directly. "Dr. Winters? Is there something wrong with one of the patients?" Gabriel sat down across from her, his heart racing. He reached into his wallet and pulled out the worn photograph: 2 children, standing in front of a brick building, the boy's face tear-stained, the girl's arm around his shoulders. "I've been carrying this picture for 20 years, he said. "I was hoping you might remember when it was taken." Maya's eyes widened as she stared at the photograph. The memory came flooding back: a scared boy on a roof, her desperate attempt to talk him down, the painted stone she'd given him as a promise that someone cared. "Gabriel Carter," she whispered. You were going to. "Jump," he finished quietly, "until you found me, until you convinced me that my life had value." Tears filled Maya's eyes as she looked at the man the frightened boy had become. "You remembered me all this time?" "I've been looking for you for 20 years, Gabriel admitted. "I became a doctor because of what you said that night. Every child I've saved, every life I've helped heal it, all started with your words." Maya reached across the table and touched the photograph. "I painted you a stone," she remembered, a smiley face. Gabriel smiled, reaching into his other pocket. He pulled out a small, smooth stone, its painted face faded but still visible. "My good luck charm," he said. "I've carried it through medical school, residency, every surgery. It reminds me that someone believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." What happened next changed everything at Chicago General Hospital. Gabriel, now knowing the full story of his connection to Maya, began advocating for her advancement within the hospital system. He recommended her for the Advanced Pediatric Care Program, supported her application for the hospital's nursing leadership track, and ensured she received the recognition she deserved. But more importantly, he established the Maya Rodriguez Foundation for Foster Youth in Healthcare program, providing scholarships, mentorship, and support for young people from the foster system pursuing careers in medicine. The announcement was made at the hospital's annual gala, where Gabriel shared their story with the assembled crowd of doctors, nurses, administrators, and donors. 20 years ago, a little girl saved my life with a simple act of kindness, he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. She reminded me that my life had value, that I could grow up to help others. Tonight, I want to honor her by ensuring that other children from similar backgrounds have the same opportunities we've fought so hard to achieve. The room erupted in applause as Maya, now wearing the dress Gabriel had insisted on buying for her, stood beside him with tears in her eyes. "Maya taught me that healing isn't just about medical procedures," Gabriel continued. "It's about seeing the whole person, about offering hope when someone has none left." She's been doing that every day for the past 3 years, and it's time the world knew it. 6 months later, the Maya Rodriguez Foundation had awarded its first round of scholarships to 12 young people pursuing healthcare careers. The hospital had also implemented a new mentorship program, pairing experienced staff with employees from challenging backgrounds. Maya, now the director of pediatric patient advocacy, had her own office and a team of nurses working under her guidance. But she still took shifts in the pediatric ward, still whispered encouragement to frightened children, still carried smooth stones in her pockets to give to patients who needed a tangible reminder that someone cared. One evening, as she was making her rounds, she encountered a young medical student who seemed overwhelmed by the intensity of pediatric rotations. "It's a lot," the student said, wiping tears from his eyes after a particularly difficult case. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for this." Maya sat down beside him, pulling a painted stone from her pocket. "You know," she said softly, "I once knew a boy who thought he wasn't cut out for life at all. But someone reminded him that he was going to grow up and do something amazing. And you know what? He became one of the best pediatric surgeons in the country." She placed the stone in the student's hand. "Sometimes we just need someone to believe in us until we can believe in ourselves." The student looked at the stone, then at Maya's kind eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. I really needed to hear that." As Maya walked away, she smiled, knowing that somewhere, Gabriel was probably smiling too. The ripples of kindness they'd started all those years ago continued to spread, touching lives in ways they might never fully know. 2 years later, at the Foundation's annual fundraising dinner, Maya stood before a crowd of donors, medical professionals, and scholarship recipients. She held up a small, smooth stone, not the original, but one of dozens she'd painted over the years. "This is more than just a painted rock," she said. "It's a reminder that we all have the power to save lives, not just with medical procedures, but with simple acts of human kindness. We never know when a word of encouragement, a moment of compassion, or a small gesture of hope might change the entire trajectory of someone's life." In the audience, Gabriel watched with pride as Maya continued her speech. Beside him sat Dr. Chen, now the hospital's chief of staff, and next to her, the young medical student Maya had encountered that night, now a successful resident who'd just been accepted into the pediatric surgery program. "I was once a scared little girl in the foster system," Maya said, her voice strong and clear. "But I learned something important. No one is invisible when we truly see each other. And sometimes, the light we offer others in their darkest moment returns to illuminate our own path when we need it most." As the evening concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Gabriel approached Maya. "You know," he said, "I think that scared little boy would be pretty proud of what we've accomplished." Maya smiled, looking around at the faces of the scholarship recipients, the mentors, the donors who'd been moved by their story. "I think that scared little girl would be pretty amazed too," she replied. Gabriel pulled out his wallet and showed her the photograph one more time. 2 children who had no idea that their brief encounter would ripple through decades, eventually creating waves of change that would touch hundreds of lives. "Thank you," he said simply, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Maya took his hand, and together they looked out at the room full of people whose lives had been touched by their story. "Thank you," she replied, "for helping me realize that being seen was just the beginning."